Yeah.
So let's play a game. What? But I still think it's an interesting conversation.
Wait. Sacks or quarterback stat.
Oh, hell no.
Still got a few more to go.
Slow down, baby.
That's fair.
Finish him, Daddy.
Additionally,
Do you want to guess the last two?
No, it's my turn.
Because of how dangerous he is with his feet.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
And I think there's an interesting conversation.
no, God.
You know, that's just the nature of the beast in this business.
Daddy.
Welcome, everybody, to Hashtag Sports. I am Paul, and that is Joe. I'm getting good at this, Joe. Like, I have to compliment myself every time. It's so hard. That is Joe. And Ryan and Mario have the evening off. The NFL Scouting Combine has happened. I was off of work. I had nothing better to do with my life than just pound through whatever was going to happen at the NFL Scouting Combine. And boy, was it delicious. Never disappoints. I love me some NFL Scouting Combine. And of course, the Scouting Combine is not the only thing that people base their decisions on when it comes to making selections at the NFL draft. However, the Underwear Olympics is something that I really do enjoy, solely because, one, the pomp and circumstance of it is kind of funny to me. But two, it gets you exposure to players who you might not have necessarily gotten a lot of exposure to otherwise. So, indeed, happy Monday. And we are here. Hey, Daniel, what's going on? Happy Monday, indeed. We are going to talk about some of the winners from the Scouting Combine that the Buffalo Bills might look to target. We hope to get to some names that you might be unfamiliar with. And we went through and did all the dirty work because, Joe, I don't know about you, but when Brandon Beane at the Scouting Combine, and you heard Joe Brady say the exact same thing, you heard Jim Leonhard say the exact same thing, like, they're not looking for anything but the best football players. How does that make you feel when you hear those guys say they're looking for the best football players? Now, mind you, Joe Brady, Jim Leonhard, new to their respective roles. But when I heard Brandon Beane say it, I'd prefer to hear what you have to say before I share, right? Like, if you hear Brandon Beane talk about, no, we're just going to go get the best football players, does that feel a little cliche to you?
Well, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. There's a chance I am. But the last time we heard Brandon Beane talk the way he talked at this year's NFL Combine, at least in my opinion, is when we went back to back on defensive ends in the first and second round, right? And we saw how that did not work at all. Yeah. So it's a scary thought to think that's what we're doing again. Now the difference is obviously Joe Brady mindset compared to a Sean McDermott mindset might be a little different, but still Brandon Beane's the guy leading that room in both scenarios. And so, yeah, it is a little bit scary. Now, is there a place to say that, you can never have too many great talented players? Yes. Like you always want to add the best talent you can, no matter what. And, the debate of in the draft, whether you go for position of need or best available, has always been a debate amongst fans around the league and probably amongst owners, coaches, all of them. So hearing it is one thing, seeing it is another thing, because what I view as not only the Bills' needs and what I feel is the best talent on the board at certain draft picks is going to be completely different than what Brandon Beane, Joe Brady, and all of them decide is what is best available at that time, right? And that's what's scary to me is we've seen for a while now Brandon Beane pass over on talent that the majority of Bills fans have been like, wait a second, why are you trading down in this situation? Why are you skipping some of this talent and still saying, oh, we're going over best available? Well, no, you're not. That's not what the eye test is telling me. You're saying one thing and doing another thing. And so that's a very scary proposition if you're a Bills fan.
Yeah, and I totally agree, right? And let's call out that, new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator, same scouting department, right? I think that's important to call out, even though you had a change in head coach. And yes, there's some shuffling when it comes to the internals behind the scenes. But effectively, this is still Brandon Beane's draft, and he is apparently now getting to do it Django Unchained. And we'll just see what that looks like. And because drafts, and I think all Bills fans will kind of agree, drafts have been very bipolar for the Bills, right? When you try and go back and look and see what were their priorities, it was, we're going to get the best athlete. We're going to get the best athlete. We're going to get the best athlete. We took a guy that was his team's captain and a former wrestler. Okay, now we're going to get the best athlete. We're going to get the former wrestler. Like, it just felt that way. And I'm curious to see, are we still going to get some of that, right? Because we really don't know. We can only kind of guess which players Beane really pushed for, which players McDermott really pushed for, and ultimately that's all speculation now, because Beane will never, ever go back and say which players he versus McDermott preferred, with exception to Keon Coleman, right? I think Terry will let the cat out of the bag there.
Yeah,
right.
Just ask Pagula, and he'll let you know. Apparently, so
that's fine. True. Yeah, maybe we're just asking the wrong person. That's a good point, Joe. Maybe we're just asking the wrong person. But it'll be fascinating to see what this draft ultimately looks like, because now we'll get to see what the full persona of a Bills draft really is. Is it going to be a draft where, you're sitting at 26, you don't have a ton of capital here. Like, you need starters, and you've got 3 picks in the top 100. That's not good enough, right? So if that's really not good enough, what can you leverage, right? Who do you move, or what do you move to try and leverage to get better today? And because to me, Beane walks in and says, this could be my last draft. If he goes in the first 3 picks in the draft for the Bills, ultimately skunk out, right? If you have another Landon Jackson, no offense to Landon Jackson, got hurt, dealt with injury issues, kind of ineffective at the beginning, right? But ultimately injured. If you get another Landon Jackson in the first 3 rounds, that might be Brandon Beane's last draft, because you can't continue to punt early assets like that. So I am curious to see if we're going to see a really cavalier approach.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to see what he decides to do, because I completely agree with you. This very well can be Brandon Beane's last draft if it doesn't go well. It was funny, before we came on here, we were talking a little bit about we went on to Buffalo Rumblings and saw some of the formal interviews that the Buffalo Bills had. And I was looking down this list, and there were some punters on here. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, Brandon Beane can't go punter. He just can't at any point. He really can't at any point.
They interviewed 2 punters.
They interviewed 2 punters. I'm like, why did you do that? You just wasted time. Like, you can't do that. Even like everyone's like 7th rounder. Like, no, get talent. And, hopefully we have a year like we did 2 or 3 years ago where we don't need to use the punter at all. So it doesn't matter who it is.
Right. Yeah. And, as the NFL scouting combine comes to a close, right, we've always talked about the Senior Bowl being something that the Bills really have leaned on in the past. I'm curious if that's because, the McDermott and Beane could make a more personal connection with players, because they're a little bit more available during the Senior Bowl for things like that. It's a little bit less formal than the NFL scouting combine. So I'm curious again if we're going to see kind of an over-reliance on the Senior Bowl, because, time on task was a big deal. I feel like that's not going to be a thing anymore, right? I think we're probably past that. So I'm very excited about that. And hold on, wait a minute. Boys, it's spring. You don't need to dress like that anymore. It was 12 degrees today.
Yeah, it's pretty cold. We're expecting snow overnight here. So, snow that's turning into sleet, that's turning into rain, that's turning back into... It's going to be a lot of fun tomorrow morning, basically, is what it's boiling down to.
Well, you guys don't even get to see what I walk around my house in. I have like a fuzzy purple parka that I like walk around my house in, because my I have money to afford heat. I just have a split level, and the upstairs gets heated really well. The downstairs is built halfway into the ground in Buffalo, so it's just always cold. It's like 63 down here. It doesn't matter how much the heat's on. It's just always 63. And for the record, spring isn't until we got a few weeks, right?
March 1st, March 1st.
No,
Groundhog saw a shadow and everything. Like, stop it. Like, it doesn't even matter.
Is that it? We're going by Groundhog?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
why not?
Yeah, it's the Bills draft just felt like they pull a rat out of the ground to see how the season's going to go.
What's happening here?
So
That's his ass. I don't know.
Did you ever hear the story of Bill Murray talking about the groundhog? Because it bit him during filming a Groundhog
Did it really?
Day.
No, I've never heard the story.
So
I mean, great
if you
movie,
watch,
of course, but
he's wearing gloves, right? So the first day they did it, this groundhog bit him, and you may not realize, but groundhog have massive teeth, huge, massive teeth, and it bit him the first day. So the second day, he's like, to hell with this, and he went and he got chainmail gloves to go underneath his leather gloves, and the groundhog still bit him through the chainmail gloves that you can use like in a kitchen. Like if anybody's ever worked in a kitchen, you might have to wear those. So he, being Bill Murray, he's like, who trained this groundhog? Like, where do we get this? And the animal handlers they had to fess up. They're like, well, no one trains groundhogs.
Right.
We found him here 2 weeks ago. So the whole movie, like Bill Murray had already filmed the scene where the groundhog was driving the car.
Yeah.
That was before he got bit by the groundhog. So he'd been filming a movie with a wild groundhog that the animal handlers just found a couple weeks earlier. It just made sure it didn't have rabies. And that was it. That was
it. You're hired.
Man, the 90s were a wild time to be alive, right?
So that's what we're saying about the Bills draft. It's Groundhog Day again.
Yeah, that's it.
Right? Like, that's the title of that Bills draft this year.
So let's start talking about positions, because it's not going to be a Bills draft if we're not talking about the wide receiver position. So what we did here at Hashtag Sports was we tried to look at what would be the markers of athleticism using just scouting combine performance, right? And then kind of mixing it in with in-season performance. So who were the best athletes at the position? Because again, you hear Beane talk about we want the best football players. In my estimation, that hasn't been true of Beane. He's always leaned towards let's bet on the athlete, right? If I'm reading tea leaves trying to determine which players Beane has pushed for versus McDermott, I'm erring on the side that Beane's gone with the athlete, right? So what we did was we went and pulled the scouting combine results and then looked for players who finished in the top 15 of certain categories. Okay. So like, as an example with wide receiver, we looked at things like if they ran the shuttle or 3-cone, right? What was their 40 time? What was their vertical? What was their broad jump? Vertical and broad jump and 40 times typically talk about, and 10-yard splits, by the way, those typically lean towards explosiveness. And there are certain positions where that's more valuable than others. Like at a linebacker, you're not really looking at the explosiveness of a linebacker. You are looking at it for defensive end. You're looking at it at wide receiver. You're looking at it at running back. Pretty confident. We didn't even bother looking at running backs here. I feel pretty confident that while the Bills may leave the draft with a running back, they seem to have a habit to do that. I can't imagine that it's going to be a high priority for them. So we talked about two receivers here that really blew the combine out of the water as far as pure athleticism. One, the Bills met with, and we're going to talk about him first, and that's Skylar Bell. So Skylar Bell is from UConn, a MAC guy. If you are a UB Bulls fan, you may be familiar with Skylar Bell at UConn. What was that?
Horns up.
Horns up? Is that what we're doing? Oh, for UB.
For UB. Yeah.
I was like, UConn's the Huskies, buddy. We are on the wrong page. Sorry, you lost me there. So by NFL standards, we're looking at a player who is typically not considered a boundary player in Skylar Bell. Skylar Bell, 6 foot tall, 190 pounds, but in the 40 time posted a 4.4. That was ranked 10th overall. Vertical of 41-inch vert. That was good for 4th. And the broad jump 11 feet and 1 inch. That was good for 6th overall. Over 100 receptions, over 1,200 yards in his college career, and 13 touchdowns. But Joe, you had brought this up to me earlier. Skylar Bell met with Buffalo as per Buffalo rumblings, right? So how much do you think the meeting there and then the performance at the scouting combine really matters, right? Like when we talk about all these other players, no other player we're going to talk about has met with the Bills. Does that really give a player like Skylar Bell an edge, Or were the Bills just kind of getting this one there and on the board? Because again, he's a little undersized for wide receiver for what you're really looking for. Although this team has not ever shown success with a receiver over 6'2". Right. So like, what's the priority here? And how do you feel about the Bills meeting with Skylar Bell?
Sure. I mean, you have to look at it and say that does give Skylar Bell at this point a leg up, right? Because he did have that meeting with the Buffalo Bills with Brandon Beane. So he's able to talk to them where these other players have not. If you're going for a job interview and they look at your previous performance but don't ask you questions and they ask the other guy a question, you're like, wait a second. But to me, there's a lot more that goes into it than that. See, they still have the pro days of all these athletes that they're going to go to, and they're going to be able to talk to them at the pro day. Who did they talk to? I haven't looked into this yet. Who did they talk to at the Senior Bowl that they were able to talk to? Because like you said before, there's a little bit more availability during the Senior Bowl. So who did they talk to at that time, right? And also something that goes through my mind is when is UConn's pro day compared to when our other teams' pro days that the Buffalo Bills might have players of interest, right? Like it's like if UConn's pro day is the same day as Arizona State's or as somebody else where it's like, okay, we want to go there as well, then you have a conflict of interest there. So does it matter that he's the one guy that they seem to interview who fits this billing that hashtag put together as far as these are the guys, the athletes that Brandon Beane might want? I think it does matter. But what does it also say that, we put this nice little thing together about who are the best athletes after the combine, or at least the ones that seem to show that athletic prowess or whatever you want to call it. And the Buffalo Bills really interviewed too many of those guys. So maybe we're wrong in that.
And Joe, like just to harken back from the report from Buffalo Rumblings, right, which is just a collection of Twitter mentions, right? So like Josh Reed is on there, Talbot's on there, Mookie, Matt Perino, like these are just all based off of what they've heard from people who should know these things. So I just want to call out that that's where we're getting it from. It's not Rumblings does not have that information. They're just collecting it. But if you look at the players that are on that list right now, they're all major schools except for UConn, right? I think that's a great point. Sometimes those scouting combines visits might be players that Buffalo probably has no interest in going to UConn for their pro day. Right. Like in reality, they probably have little to no interest because it's not Washington. It's not Clemson. It's not Auburn. It's not Alabama. It's not Texas A&M. Right. It's not Miami. Well, those are all schools that they visited players with from the scouting combine. Right. So, again, you just kind of look at it and say, now, why are you meeting with those players now when you most certainly are going to be at those pro days? Right? Like you're going to be, those are primary major conference schools who turn out NFL talent year in and year out. You're going to spend time at those pro days. So why are you talking to those players now? And I get it. They only get so many visits after the scouting combine to visit players and bring them into the facility. So I get that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that come along with it. But really only two, I guess you could say, smaller schools were amongst their scouting combine visits. That was Skylar Bell from UConn and then Jack Stonehouse from Syracuse, a punter, right? But let's talk real quick about Skylar Bell. So again, we talked about him being a little undersized, but this is a player who can stretch the field for you. Now, with that being said, at 6 foot, under 200, you'd kind of be a little worried about him in man coverage, but he's got quickness to kind of get off man. I will say that after the catch, he's not as fast as you'd like him to be, right? I think Bills fans kind of have a unicorn in Khalil Shakir, right? Where you get him the ball, he's not fast, he's not particularly elusive from the looks of it, but he just never seems to go down. Skylar Bell doesn't really fit into that mold, right? Where he's going to be quick, he's going to stretch the field for you. Again, at only 6 feet tall, you kind of have some limitations there, but he can have big playability. However, he has a tendency to let the ball get a little in on his body. He's kind of mechanical out of his routes, and those are things that make scouts kind of go, ooh, okay. Yes, big playability, but how versatile can he be in a route tree, right? Where defensive backs can pick up on everything, anything and everything. Right. So if you're looking at Skylar Bell, does Skylar Bell, from your estimation, solve a problem for you if you're the Buffalo Bills?
Well, you do like the idea that he can get vertical and sprout the field, right? That's something that the Buffalo Bills clearly have an issue with. But not only do you talk about some of the issues he has, and it's true, you also look at the competition he's playing too, right? Like that has to be.
That's a great point.
That has to be taken
great point.
into account. No offense to horns up, no offense to the Bulls, but like his best game. His best game in 2025, he had 11 for 107 against Syracuse. And listen, 11 for 107, awesome, great job, Syracuse. Like, good job, And then he had 125 yards against Florida Atlantic. Like, good for you. You do all these good things. You check off the boxes. But what's that going to lead to when you're playing against a corner coming out of Georgia? When you're playing against a corner coming out of Miami? When you're playing against some of the best
super fair.
In the world?
Super fair to say.
And that's not to say he's not going to do well. He very well could, but that's just something you need to take into account and go into his games. And, you look at NFL.com, and I know, people will say whatever they want about some of these like comps, right? And we never want comp players, especially before they're even drafted, right? But they are comping him to Michael Gallup.
That's really fair, to be honest with you.
And it's a really fair comparison.
Really fair.
What did we think of Michael Gallup coming out of college, right? And what did he turn into? Yeah. Great NFL,
tons of upside.
Good NFL career, tons of upside, but just never seemed to get to that next level, right?
Right. And something was missing.
Something was missing all the time, and maybe it was the fact they played for Dallas. That seems to hurt a lot of people.
Boy, you're just hating on the teams that people play for right now, Joe.
Really
you're banging on UConn. You're banging on the Cowboys.
And they all seem to have the same color scheme. Yeah. But no, and that's a very, like you said, that's a very good comp. But if you like this guy because he could get to all three levels, that's wonderful. But like you said, sometimes he has a hard time with his first couple steps. Sometimes he has a hard time with that press coverage. The press coverage doesn't get easier in the NFL compared to college. Like, it's going to get harder. And so that's something that Brandon Beane and these scout teams have to look at. And that's what they get paid to do.
Sure.
Is this a guy, the good thing about him is you won't have to spend capital, to try to get this guy, right? Like there are spots where you'll be drafting where you could find a way to get him, but you can say that about a lot of wide receivers in this draft class.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's where the draft gets pretty erratic, is because you'll see guys shoot up the board in the middle of the second round, where you're like, man, this guy is, like we saw it happen with the Keon Coleman draft. Right? Like Buffalo trades down and then receiver go off the board, right? Like, and that is that can happen. And you just hope not to be on the receiving end of that, and then have to pick up what's left. Not to say that is Keon, right? Don't want to say that. But I do want to point out that trading back in drafts ends up with you exposing yourself to a run on a position that you could have taken the top player at the top of that run. And now you're kind of left with other teams having made a decision for you. And that's sometimes challenging. Speaking of challenging, let's kind of move towards the next target. Jeff Caldwell is a name I don't expect people to know. But at 6'5", I'm assuming a lot of Bills fans will know who he is now. And he is screaming up draft boards because you want to talk about a guy who absolutely took over athletically at the combine. It was Jeff Caldwell. We're talking a 4.31 in the 40, which ranked him second, a 42-inch vertical, which ranked him second, a broad of 11.2, which ranked him second. And this is unfortunately a guy who has half as many college receptions as Skylar Bell. He had 53. Now, mind you, Cincinnati, again, not an amazing conference, right? Better than UConn, but not an amazing conference. Has racked up 1,000 yards in 2025, 11 touchdowns. So big body guy. But again, this is a player who is probably going to be valued more for his athleticism and far less for what he's actually put out on film. I'm going to be honest with you. The packaging's really fantastic, right? Like Jeff Caldwell is a fascinating player to look at because you see on tape how dynamic he can be, right?
Yeah.
However, size and athleticism doesn't do it for you because he's underwhelming at 50-50 balls. Now, again, this is a guy who's 6'5", 220.
Yes.
So, like, he should be fine in your 50-50 balls. Those are what you anticipate and expect a player that size to be for you. That's not really him, right?
Right.
He absolutely can stretch a field for you, and at 6'5", that's amazing, right? But unfortunately, struggles really to understand route concepts, right? Still a really basic route tree. I think that might have just been Cincinnati, right? So maybe you could say this wasn't a dare to be great scenario, not to quote Better Off Dead, right? But just say this isn't a dare to be great scenario. I really like the athleticism, Jeff Caldwell. I don't think there's a better athlete at the wide receiver position than him. But there's a lot of red flags saying this is not a player that belongs in the top 90 for you, right? You need something, but you need better than this, even though he's the best athlete at the wide receiver position as per the reports from the scouting combine.
Yeah, I mean, you think about some of the biggest issues the Bills had last year. You know, you talk about those fade routes in the end zone. There's nobody, right? Like when you're doing a fade route, trying to get Shakir to do a fade, like it's just stupid. You're just like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. And you see someone who's 6'5" going after it and saying, okay, that size is something the Bills could definitely use. But at the same time, if you're talking about a guy who can't win 50-50 balls, that's a problem. You know, if you're 6'5", and you can't catch 50-50 balls, and you like you said, you're having problems with having a big route tree and thing concepts. You know, you're talking about Joe Brady offense that can be very, very confusing to some of these young players coming in.
Exactly. That's right.
Things up. We don't need someone and you know, talking about Brandon Beane's last possible year being in the draft class. You don't need someone who it's going to take 2-3 years to figure things out before he gets going. But again, at 6'5", you know, the combine tape that you watch him at the combine. If you don't watch college football, you just saw him at the combine, you're like, this is a first round pick. But if you've seen him at Cincinnati, if you watch some of the games, the game against UCF, some of these other games, what can he do at the next level? It's really a question. But he'll have a chance to prove himself, whether it's in Buffalo or somewhere else. So,
well, in a bad team will make a bold choice before Buffalo, right? And I think that's kind of the way you have to look at it. As much as I would love to say the Bills will target Jeff Caldwell at 126, he ain't going to get there, right? Like the tape isn't great, but the athleticism is just simply too good. We've seen worse players drafted higher with less promise, right?
Well, and something else we're really not talking about yet with these wide receivers, which we should be, because it was a big factor these past couple seasons with James Cook, is how well do these guys block in the open field? Like what kind of physicality are they willing to show to get that extra second, third level block to spring your running back? And that's also something. You're 6'5", you better be able to throw your body around a little bit and get in there.
Yeah, and I could tell you that that's probably not going to be something that you get from Jeff Caldwell, right? Like it's just you got to have a dog in you for that, right? And like he can't stack on verticals. Like I don't expect him to get dirty with the corner either, right?
You're gonna make me insult not just the team but like a whole conference. But if you look at the I just don't look at the Big 12 wide receivers. Like they're flashy, right? Yeah. But they're never like that. They don't got that dog in them. That's not who they are. Go get an LSU wide receiver if you want a wide receiver that has that dog in them. You know what I'm saying? So that's just how I see him.
Totally agree. So Joe, I guess we kind of get the opportunity now to look at what the next position that that we want to look at for Bills fans. And again, not to downplay the wide receiver position here. It's an area of need, but you're going to hear Skylar Bell's name quite a bit. You're going to hear Jeff Caldwell's name quite a bit. Just understand that You know, Skylar Bell, if that's who you want to pull the trigger on in the second round, I mean, you can go ahead. But as Joe had mentioned before, unproven conference, you know, like I would say good production, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if he necessarily answers to the problems that you have at the wide receiver position. I just don't think it's enough. And Jeff Caldwell, again, outstanding, dynamic athlete. But again, I just don't think it answers to that position. While you will hear Jeff Caldwell you will hear his name likely early in the draft. You just can't turn down athleticism like that at the NFL. The Raiders will draft him, for God's sakes. They always do that shit. We get the opportunity to talk about next position. So, Joe, I would like you to select the next position, and I will go ahead and talk about the players that we've identified. What position do you think you want to go to next? Me
personally, I want to go to the linebacker position. That's my favorite position on the field. That's very much a position need for the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion. And
I don't know why you'd say that. I don't know why you'd say they need help at linebacker.
I don't know either. But you know, again, if you go back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, I personally believe, and there's no reason to believe this, like you said 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, like if there is someone on Buffalo Bills social media saying, you know, we know what the Bills are doing, like, no, we don't. Like, but I just have this feeling that there's going to be a lot of offensive moves the Bills try to make, not A+ moves, but in free agency, and so that will open the door hopefully for some defensive players in the draft. And again, linebacker, you look at you know, I like Jacob Rodriguez. You know, we talked about him a little bit because he was pretty good at the combine as well. And I think there was one or two more that you mentioned too.
Well, so. I mean, Jacob Rodriguez, we could certainly talk about him. Again, not likely a player that people are going to be super familiar with.
Right.
Again, just kind of the nature of the beast, right? Like you can't watch every Texas Tech football game, right?
Correct.
Like just can't. Jacob Rodriguez gets me a little bit here, right? Because 6'1", 230.
Yep.
And while I like the athleticism enough, there's some things that I don't like so much, right? And size to me is a big deal here, right? Like we've seen this really light linebacker group where, you know, like we were just praying for the ghost of Matt Milano pass to show up every week. And I think that's sort of where I kind of get caught up is in this division. And I think the Bills division requires something different than every other division in football. And it's the fact that you have, you know, changing the guard in Miami, right? You've got changing in with the Jets just constantly. And now you have a stalwart with the Patriots. And the Patriots have proven that they want to run the football. You know, that's how they're going to run their offense. And when you're looking at new regimes with the Jets in Miami, they're going to have to do the same thing, right? Like they have to run the football in order to establish their offense. So I don't know if you have a division that has the running backs that are in the AFC East, right? Like every team has a super dynamic running back, or in the Patriots case, enough running backs to keep running the football. That, you know, run defense here from the linebacker group, you're going to get beat up if you're not firm enough inside. And I guess that's sort of where like I get a little caught up with a player Jacob Rodriguez's size. Like 6'1", 230 is big enough, right? But I don't know if he's quite big enough, especially if they're going to be trying to run this 3-4-4-3 YOLO defense. Like we're just going to roll out the best 11 that we got, right? I just don't think Jacob Rodriguez is good enough in coverage. Like that's me. Maybe I'm seeing that different. Like, talk me off the ledge on Jacob Rodriguez.
Well, what I like about Jacob Rodriguez is if you watch film of him, sideline to sideline, he's constantly moving, right? Like, he's not flat-footed. He's not waiting for the play to come to him. And when you're a smaller linebacker, that's exactly what you need to do. That was what was so great about Matt Milano was he wasn't waiting for the play to develop and come to him. He was making reads. Now, in your defense or in defense of anyone who can knock that, absolutely. When you go to make a read, sometimes you get caught, right? Like that's just the nature of the beast. But if you stay still, you're caught either way. And we're talking about a guy who creates turnovers, in 2015 or I'm sorry, in 2025, 7 fumbles. Like that's a big game changer, right? Every time we talk about winning the possession battle, winning, gaining possessions, that's what he can give to you. 13 career forced fumbles is always good. But to me, for linebackers, and this is what I like about linebackers, this is why it's one of my favorite positions on the field, is because to me, the linebacker position is the one where it's almost like if you play defense in basketball, right? It's the one where the hustle matters the most, I think.
Yeah.
Like you can make up for a lot if you just show that grit and are able to hustle and move sideline to sideline. Because, one thing that's really great about moving sideline to sideline and being able to make those first moves is, sure, he might be taken out by somebody, but hopefully by the time he's taken out by somebody's right behind him, right? Like he's already made the play move in a direction it wasn't supposed to, and defenders are there ready to clean up whatever he has. Now, again, a lot of that relies on people not missing tackles, making sure you keep gap integrity, those stupid things that we see. And it's not just the Bills, of course, but we've seen the Bills do time and time again where we just yell at someone like Joey Bosa or AJ Epineza for not keeping gap integrity and just letting the play bounce outside. And it's just like we had him caught in the backfield and you just let him gain 7 yards instead because you can't stay still.
Yeah. To kind of play off what you're going there, where the direction you're going. If I was, and again, I'm going to go a little traditional, right? If I am running a 4-3 scheme, I like Jacob Rodriguez. If I'm running a 3-4 scheme, I just think it's a little too muddy because does he win the Johnny Hustle Award? 100%. This guy will run up and down the field. No play is dead to him at any moment. That's why, like, if you look at his tackle numbers, like the production looks there, right? He led the FBS with 7 forced fumbles this year, right? Like the effort and hustle is certainly there. Although he does take a lot of chances, right? And he has a tendency to be a little over aggressive, which obviously leads to, bad angles and bad lanes and, gets a little caught up in the dirty across the defensive line because he puts himself in bad situations, trusting his athleticism and hustle, right? I think in a 4-3 system, it's a little easier to kind of hide that, right? Than in a 3-4, right? I love the idea of Jacob Rodriguez if you're running a 4-3, because I think he's going to be a solid inside linebacker in the NFL. Like everything points to saying that he probably will be. I just don't love the idea here.
And it really depends when the Buffalo Bills are talking about a hybrid defense. What does that even mean, right? Like, where are you actually going for a hybrid defense? Because teams can say that, but you're going to have one that you lean to in pressure situations, right? You have to. Like, that's just the way it's going to be. You're not going to be 50-50. You're not going to see someone flipping a coin on the side and saying, 4-3 this time. Like, no, you're going to lean one way or the other. So for somebody like a Jacob Rodriguez, it really is dependent on where do you plan to go. But if you're truly playing on, let's say, 60-40, as far as what defense you're going to run, you want the guys that can hustle because you know that they can switch it back and forth easier than someone who kind of has his foot set in one way.
I do want to move to our next linebacker on the list. And this one gets me excited. This is like the pound the table, go get this guy sort of linebacker for me. They happen every now and again. This year it's from Ohio State. And Sonny Styles, maybe the best name in the draft. Sonny Styles, 6'5", 245. I want to remind you, at one time, he played safety. He was a safety at that size. That's crazy pants. But top peak athleticism, right? Like first in everything. Guy is just an absolute dog. And if you're looking to change your defense, this is the type of player that you're going to have to go get. He will never make it to you, right? You're looking at, we need an identity on defense. We need a guy that's just nonstop action, best athlete on the field this is the guy you go get is Sonny Styles. Now, again, if he was a defensive end, which at 6'5", 245, he could have been,
Could be,
right? He could have been. If he's a defensive end, this guy's a top 5 pick. Right. But because he plays linebacker, you know how this goes, Joe. We see good linebackers every year fall to 11, 12, 14 sometimes before you see the first linebacker off the board. He'll be the first linebacker off the board. And I'll be honest with you, he's probably misplayed as a linebacker. But the reason he's a linebacker is he's pretty decent. He's pretty good in pass coverage, right? And that's because he was a safety. Like, this is a guy normally at most colleges ends up as a defensive end.
Right. I mean, and when it comes to Sonny Styles, like, the Bills would have to move up, right? There's no way he's going to be sticking around late first round. In fact, I've seen some projections have him go as early as the Giants at 5. So is this something the Bills are willing to do? Because you and I would be on the same page. The Bills move up to get Sonny Styles in the first round. I'm loving it. And like you said, in most years past, you don't have to jump up as far as 5 to get a Sonny Styles. He'll be there at 10, 12, 15. Yeah. So what you're giving up is not as crazy as we might sit here on March 2nd and say, man, you're going to have to give up too much to get this guy. Maybe not. You just don't know how the draft's going to fall. And if he falls into the mid-teens, then that could be an opportunity for the Buffalo Bills to move up and to solidify that position at defense and kind of get, that identity on defense of like, this is what we're going for. And you really, like you said, you really answer a lot of questions on defense with one draft pick, right? Sure. It's like, man, you got a guy who can play safety. You have a guy who can play 4-3, 3-4. You have a guy that if you wanted to put him at the edge, probably could do it and do just fine. And he could do all those things for you. And it's not only he can do all those things, he has done all those things already at the college and high school levels. So it's not foreign to him. And that's also a check in his box as well. Like, just thinking about, there's so much more that he has to learn and grow at the linebacker position. And that's scary to think about. Think about how good he has been in such a short time.
Well, and again, like you talk about Sonny Styles, he was first in the 40, first in the vertical with 43.5, which is ridiculous. 11-2 in the broad, first in the broad. But from a college production standpoint, now mind you, plays at Ohio State, right? 81 tackles. Jacob Rodriguez, 128.
Yeah.
Like, that's it appears that Jacob Rodriguez played 7 more games than Sonny Styles. But these are the conversations we have to have, right? Like, Sonny Styles in 2025 versus Jacob Rodriguez in 2025. If you're going and saying, well, stats show who a football player is, right? Maybe we're reading the tea leaves wrong, and we should be looking at college production stats and weighing them a little bit heavier. Whereas Jacob Rodriguez had 40 more tackles than Sonny Styles. Yet we're talking about multi-million dollars in difference. Like, these guys are going to get paid off their rookie contracts several $1 million different.
Now, what I want to ask you, I think this is something that when you're drafting a player does have to be considered. Jacob Rodriguez, 23 years old. Sonny Styles, 21 years old. So how does, like, Sonny Styles is more on the younger side for this draft class, right? So how much does that play a factor of, I remember when we got Edmonds, right? Edmonds was like 19, whatever it was. Like, he's on his 3rd contract and he's still 22. Like, how did this happen?
Well, Beane has talked about that in the past. And just to refresh on that conversation, Beane's talked about the premium positions, right? The ones that you can't afford to go out and get in free agency. And I think that's quickly ratcheting up to every position, right? But they've always leaned on, you draft your corners, you draft your defensive ends, you draft your tackles, and they've drafted linebackers. They haven't spent money at linebacker. Like, they really haven't. If you go and look and see what they've done at linebacker, they have never spent money at linebacker.
Correct.
Never. So what's the priority level there? Like, who does take priority? You have to believe that they're going to address it in the draft, just given the history. And certainly you can't afford to like the Bills aren't in a position to go say, well, let's just say Fred Warner, just as an example, right? Let's just imagine for a moment in a world that Fred Warner becomes available. He's off the books for you. You can't afford him.
Correct.
Right. So you can't answer the position of free agency this year anyway. So, the age of the player, I don't think this year is as important as it might have been in previous years, right? When you're comfortable in your regime, things are going good. You can kind of play the game of longevity. I just don't know if the Bills have that in the cards this year. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, right? But the big difference between Sonny Styles and Jacob Rodriguez, and just from what we're guessing, if you're going solely by the athlete, it starts and stops at Sonny Styles. Although Jacob Rodriguez is a fun one. These I don't want to call somebody 6'1" the little engine that could, but that's kind of the direction that you end up going.
If you're looking for fun tape to watch, Jacob Rodriguez, just watching him on a football field is just fun to watch because he's constantly moving, he's constantly trying to figure things out, and it's almost like you could see his mind trying to play chess with everything else going on. It's really cool to watch.
Yeah, I'm definitely in on that. I do want to transition quickly. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this position, although I do think that it's a position of need, and we're talking across the defensive line. I think there's just too many questions here for us to really be able to give a true assessment for what Buffalo needs. We really don't know what their priorities are going to be across the defensive line. I can tell you they don't have any defensive ends under contract, right? I can tell you that. But I will tell you that they will leave with multiple defensive linemen out of this draft, and it is simply because they have to, right? You may see guys who are typically considered defensive tackles to be targets, like those lighter defensive tackles. Like if you're going to go 3-4, don't forget Ed Oliver's defensive end in a 3-4, right? That's the way that goes. That's the way it is. So I don't want to spend a ton of time talking about Zane Durant and David Gusta, but from an athleticism standpoint and from a profile standpoint, they do fit players that you should be interested in. Although, like Zane Durant's a little bit on the lighter side at 6'1", 290. Again, that's more of a 3-4 defensive end than a true defensive tackle. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about these. Is that scheme fit here matters? Zane Durant, Penn State. Don't watch that film, man. It's not great. Fast as hell.
Don't get caught up in previous defensive linemen from Penn State that the Bills have drafted.
Yeah, let's not have Aaron Maben talk. Yeah. No. We're talking completely different physicality here between Zane Durant and Aaron Maben. But this is not tape that I think is amazing to watch, right? From a production standpoint, your 3 techs in college typically don't have great production. It's kind of boring film to watch, to be perfectly honest with you. He's a little smaller. He's got shorter arms. So again, is it a perfect fit on the interior line for most teams? No. But if you're talking a 3-4 defensive end, he's got elite level speed for this position. And he's quick. So from an athleticism standpoint, he does kind of fit what you might be looking to do. That's not like Dwayne Carter, who you just want to eat people in the middle of your defense. Like that's a different position, right? We're kind of looking at these defensive tackles really being transitioned to defensive end, given the scheme.
And this kind of goes off what you said a little bit earlier as you were introducing this position. The Bills have to leave this draft with some defensive line positions, and this is a guy who's going to be available probably day 3 and maybe like day 2. But he's going to be available, and is this a guy that you can definitely draft and put in right away, like plug and play? Can he learn the system? And even if he's only available on first and second down, is this something that you can work with as your defense continues to grow? And at some point you also need bodies, and you need people under contract, and you need cheap contracts, and this is this would open up some of that for you, some of that freedom for you. But again, as we said before, Brandon Beane doesn't have that kind of time either. So where does he draw that line? Do we see him make big moves day 1, day 2, early day 3, because he knows those late day 3 draft picks mean nothing to him this year?
Sure. Yeah, that's right. I mean, you have to get your special teamers out of these late rounds, right?
Yeah.
And hey, congratulations to Sam Franklin on convincing the Bills at 30 years old to sign a 3-year contract extension.
That's what we needed.
Yep. Man, glad we locked that one down.
Yeah.
Moving over to David Gusta from Kentucky. A typical, like, I'm not going to call him a one tech, although that's really what he played in Kentucky. He's 6'2", 308. Again, great athleticism score, but didn't do a lot at the combine. But what he did do, he was listed out. He's number 1 in the bench, 37 reps. His 40 time was ranked 8th, and his broad jump was ranked 10th. So put up what he did do, he did excel at. So he played the combine game well, doing only things that he was going to excel in. However, I will tell you that as a one tech, not interested, right? Not interested in him as a one tech. Just it is. I don't foresee him being a successful one tech in the NFL. Like that, while he may be comfortable with that position, it's certainly not what you can expect from him in college or at the NFL level. The fun part for me with David Gusta is he's mean. He is he goes after guys and he is violent at contact. However, it kind of undisciplined, right? When it comes to gap integrity, right? He's mean, he's nasty in there, and I'll take all of that. But I'll take all of that in the 6th round, right? Like I'll take that player late. Like again, like we're looking at value, and we keep coming back to if he's available late. I think Joe, and maybe it's just me, but there's just so much uncertainty in this draft that I can't help but say, like, I'm uncomfortable with rounds 1 through 3. Like I don't know how comfortable I would be if David Gusta gets called in the 4th. Be like, oh man, I feel like there was some meat on the bone. Yeah, great athleticism score, but is he really going to be able to play a rotational role for you this year? Like,
yeah, and that to me is the problem with a lot of these guys who show a lot of that aggression and that just furious type come at you type speed, and they miss a lot of gap integrity, and they're just mean, right? And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's good if you can kind of control that anger. But again, you're talking about a defense who's going to be learning new things this year, who's going to be trying to switch to this hybrid type system, even if it's just a 3-4 system. That's a lot to put on for someone who just wants to, like you said, I don't know if I trust him in that type of technique, but if he's available 6th round, 5th round, whatever it would be, then you have to like the upside that you get because of that athleticism score, which puts him, like you said, I think for defensive tackles, he had the top athleticism score. So that does count for something, and we know how much Brandon Beane does like that. So yeah, sure.
One more player just to quickly discuss, Malachi Lawrence. So Malachi Lawrence is your typical defensive end that you see come out of most colleges, right? We just talked about Sonny Styles. This guy's not much different. He's 6'4", 253. Yep. UCF, and you might not be super familiar with the University of Central Florida. I do not blame you. But I mean, come on, right?
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the prototypical size, this is what you're talking about. Like we mentioned it with Sonny Styles already. At every other college, Sonny Styles is defensive end. Malachi Lawrence checks that box for you. And the Bills have been interested in players like that. This is where it gets me. I'm not interested in Malachi Lawrence as being the Bills' first pick off the board at 26. But if that's what it is, then I am willing to accept it given the depth at the position, right? Sure. Like I'm willing to be happy with it. I think this is a guy whose name is only going to rise up boards. I do not believe he's going to go down boards. He's only a riser. His name will become more and more synonymous as you get closer to the draft with a first round player. And somebody who could go screaming up draft boards. I was screaming from the hills that Joe Tryon was a first round draft pick months before the draft. And I was proven right there. And I get the same feeling watching Malachi Lawrence. He is a man among boys most of the time. And at the defensive end position, that's you can't find that in free agency, right? Like, this is a premium position. Buffalo absolutely needs help there. And I think if you look at what the Bills have struggled with, it hasn't been offense, right? Like, the Bills have lost games because of defense. Get comfortable with the fact that the Bills will probably be drafting defensive players as early as they can.
Yeah, and my biggest concern with Lawrence is the same thing that we've talked about with other players, is the lack of true competition coming out of UCF. But that's something, again, that scouts look into. I agree with you that if he's doing anything, he's just going to continue to move up on these boards, and he could end up with a first-round draft grade. Is this a player? If we're talking about, because again, I mean, this is what's so confusing and scary about this year's draft is you could easily see Beane drafting down to get more draft picks to fill these positions. Again, because we need bodies. And is this the guy that could be available later in the first round, early second round, who Brandon Beane could trade down for and pick up some extra picks? Again, that would be something nice to see. But again, I don't know how far up the board he's going to go before the draft.
Yeah, so I think we probably close this episode talking about that quickly, right? Because I think there's other positions to go to, and Joe, I'll give you a moment to put together if there's a player that you want to focus, like let everybody in hashtag Nation know, like, hey, this is a player that I'm interested in. This is a player just to be familiar with walking into the draft. If there's somebody that you want to highlight, like, I'd love to hear that. But I do want to caution, because I think a lot of people are under the impression that when you're in salary cap trouble, you have to just get as many draft picks as possible.
Right.
And I disagree with that. And here's why I disagree with that. While the NFL has a minimum salary for veterans, going and getting draft picks and then having to cut them, like going and leaving a draft with 12 picks, right? Right. Unless all of them make your roster, you're wasting money. Right. And here's what I mean when I say that. We'll use Dane Jackson as a perfect example, right? Dane Jackson was 7th round pick. Dane Jackson did not make the Bills after his draft, right? He was cut. So his guaranteed contract, the Bills had to take as dead money, because rookie contracts are fully guaranteed. So that 7th round pick that you're like, oh, we'll just take a chance on him. If you cut him and he doesn't make your final 53-man roster, the money that you spent to draft him goes against your salary cap, right? You're cutting that player. It is a guaranteed contract. So it doesn't benefit you to draft a guy in the 6th or 7th round, or draft multiple guys in the 6th and 7th round and then cut them. While you do get control of that player if you happen to get them on your practice squad, the fact of the matter is that's not how you solve salary cap problems. That's how you create salary cap problems, is going and getting as many draft picks as you can and then only keeping half of them, right? While it doesn't seem like a lot of money, it is a lot of money. And it's not a path for success. So when you hear people say, oh, the Bills need to just get as many picks as possible, no, they don't. The Bills are in salary cap jail. They need to go get veteran contracts that aren't fully guaranteed with small signing bonuses, that when they cut them, it doesn't kneecap their cap situation, right? So just when you hear people say that, just be careful there. Hashtag Nation, because you certainly don't want to just be acquiring picks that you're just going to cut, because it's going to impact your cap negatively. I'd rather sign guys to veteran minimum with moderate signing bonuses, like talking small signing bonuses, and then walking away from those veteran players, or players with no signing bonus, and then walking away from those players, then draft 10 players, keep 6 and cut 4 of those drafted players, because that's a lot of guaranteed money that just goes against your salary cap. So just a caution there, right? I just caution there.
Yeah, I mean, just take, for example, some of the dead cap money we're going to, and I'm going to mess with his name because I always did when I was doing live streams. We're paying dead cap this year to Ulofoshio, who was 100 plus pick. Like, we're paying him dead cap money. You know,
Yep.
like it's completely ridiculous. Some of the guys that were playing dead cap money. Obviously, you have some that we know about, right? But then you look at some of these, and like you said, that it adds up. It just continues to pile on and pile on and pile on. You're like, oh, it's only 800,000 here. It's only 1.2 million here. Well, only. But you know, those, like you said, those numbers add up, and it affects the top 51 every single week. So you know, if you want to get out of that situation, you don't necessarily just stockpile draft picks and say boom, 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 boom. Especially, I think, in the position the Bills are in right now, you don't want to do that. You know, I think that's something more like a team. Who has the Patriots would be a good example of a team that probably wants to stockpile draft picks and say, you know, throw all 20 into free or into practice and see what comes out of it and say, okay, but they have the money for that. So no, I think I agree with you as far as early in this draft. I think the Buffalo Bills will be going defense, but that also opens up the door to look especially at the wide receiver position, and we talked a little bit about already. Who can we get later rounds who can make a difference on his team immediately? A guy I really like at Texas A&M, and again I might mess up his last name too, is Casey Concepcion. I think he has proven that he could be a late round 2, or a late day 2, early day 3 type draft pick who can make a difference. Great vertical game, all 3 levels. Again, only 6 foot. I understand that, but like we said earlier, the Bills don't always have the best history with wide receivers over 6 foot tall. He 71 athleticism score, 75 projection score. I think that's someone that the Bills can look at, and he also was someone who the Buffalo Bills did have an interview with at the combine. So someone that I would keep my eye on, keep my ear open to, is some of these mid-tier wide receivers who can help out immediately.
Yeah, I think you're right there. So I know you went offense, right? So I'm going to kind of drift from that a little bit. I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the football because, like, as much as I would love the Bills to go get like Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles, like those are guys that just aren't simply going to be there unless you're making a move. And I know they're both from Ohio State. I know, but go look at that defense and tell me I'm wrong, right? Like that Ohio State, the middle of that Ohio State defense was scary between those two guys. They were a scary combination. So I'm going to drift a little bit away from that, and I am going to kind of say that while Buffalo certainly needs help on offense, and they certainly need help from a pass rush perspective, I am still not 1,000,000% comfortable with the cornerback position. And here is why I say that. I don't think in the second round you could hurt yourself drafting a corner, right? You can't convince me that, like you saw what happened with Hairston this year, right? You're playing Trey White all season long. Like your poor Benford is getting hung out to dry all season. So like you can look at safety and say, well, the Bills have a definitive need at safety. I doubt you see a safety in the second round the Buffalo's interested in, but I do think you still need some help at corner. And that's why in like second, it's late second round. I don't, in my opinion, I don't think they keep their second round pick. I think they probably trade that and move back into the third because that's just a Buffalo thing to do. But Toriano Pride Jr. from Mizzou, I like a lot. I'm gonna say undersized, but 5'10" at corner I don't necessarily think is undersized.
Right.
Love the explosiveness to me. He's not a press corner. Buffalo hasn't proven that they need that, right? But I absolutely love his timing on deep throws. I love his anticipation. I love his vision in zone coverage, which you don't often see in college. You see a lot of man. You don't see a ton of zone. I think he does a great job. And when he's asked to play zone, I think he does a great job. I think he's vicious against the run for being 5'10", and I think his size says, "Oh, he's a nickel corner." No, he's a perimeter. He's a perimeter corner. And if you can walk away from the draft saying, "Listen, we're going to bolster the secondary here in the early third," I'm really happy with him. Super speed, right? Like super speedy guy. He ran. Oh God, what did he run? Hold on, I'll look it up real quick. He ran a 4.32, which is ridiculous,
really
right?
Really quick.
It's ridiculous. He was 7.2 in the 3-cone drill, that was 5th, and 10.8 in the broad. And again, like you just can't have enough corners here, right? You just can't. I think we've seen injuries at that position just hurt this team over and over and over and over again. And I just don't think you can afford to do it anymore. You need to have replacement level players. And if that means trading your 2nd round pick and then grabbing Pride in the early 3rd, if he still happens to be there, then I'm all about that. I don't think his tape says he's earlier than early 3rd. Again, some athleticism folks will say that, you know, the everything, the tools are there. I like him, right? I do. He played in the SEC, so Joe can't shit on him about competition. But you know, to me, he's probably trending towards a day 3 guy again, just because of his size. But if you're Buffalo, I think you kind of have to look at 3rd round as being like, hey, we need to get depth here. We can't afford to miss. And you just have to have depth at cornerback. I just don't think they're going to have the ability to keep grabbing corners out of the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds. And you know, I just don't think they're going to have the ability to do that. McDermott was a secondary guy. Babbage was a secondary guy. They're both gone. So this is a position I think you got to press a little earlier than kind of laying back on your laurels like you have been able to.
Well, you can also look at Dalen Everett, right? Like you talked about another guy from the SEC. You know, you can never go wrong picking a corner in the 2nd round. Well, you can never go wrong picking a Georgia defender since 2020, really.
I was same way with Washington, right?
You're fine.
Give me a Washington. Yeah, just go give me a Washington corner. I don't care who he is.
I don't care.
Yeah,
that's right.
Does he have all 10 fingers? Don't care.
seems like that's not even important anymore. It doesn't matter.
Don't care. Yeah, I don't care. Well, thank you, Joe, for going on this NFL Scouting Combine recap with me. I just want to make sure that Hashtag Nation has, for reference purposes, the other folks that kind of hit it out of the park from a pure athleticism standpoint. We did not talk about the offensive line. Enrique Cruz put up an elite 40 time for an offensive lineman at under 5 seconds. 35-inch vert, 9.8 on the broad. That was 1st in both of those categories. He started all 12 games at right and left tackle this season for Kansas, 0 sacks allowed. And then Taisun Rutledge from Georgia Tech. Again, you might not be super familiar with Georgia Tech. You'd kind of have to be a fan of Georgia Tech to watch any of their football games. 6'4", 316. He's a guard. 1st in the shuttle, 4.54. Vertical was 2nd, 32.5. The 40 was 5.05, which was 5th. Among one of the top guards in this draft, 0 sacks allowed. Again, I think that's a big one for Buffalo. You know, you got Torrance right now, but you kind of looking at David Edwards on the other side, and you're likely saying goodbye to him. I think guard's a sneaky need for Buffalo. I don't think you're going to get Rutledge, but I wouldn't be mad. But another guy that banged it out of the park from pure athleticism. So just some names to be familiar with. Anything else, Joe, before we wrap up?
No, I think you're absolutely right. You know, I think about Joe Brady and how many times he run those heavy sets, and those are things that, you know, the Bills might not be able to do as much if we don't address the offensive line at least a little bit here in the draft. So we'll see what they decide to do. Again, it's all thrown up there. I'd win. Don't even bring it up. I'd win.
I take this personal, right? Like, we have families to take care of. We're all in our fucking 40s, and you want us to run? I haven't. The last time I ran was when I had an infant that put something in his mouth, because there's nothing faster than an infant with something in their mouth, right? A toddler with something in their mouth, and Kyler Murray, who looks like a toddler with something in his mouth. Tyler Murray runs like he has something he's not supposed to have. So no, we're not running. Like, come on. Do you know how devastating a hamstring injury is at 43 years old? No, thanks.
We're out. Like, we're just done.
No, that's it. That's
That's
it.
right.
Make me glue. Turn me into glue. Put me down like the horses at the Kentucky Derby, right? Like, no way.
He says
Not
he
a
thinks he
chance.
could do sub 10 seconds. So what's fun? What's fun?
Okay. Well,
That's
hold
fine.
on. Hold on. Are we running backwards?
Well, that creates whole other issues, though, right? Like,
Sure
I don't
does,
trust myself running backwards either. But if you've ever been to Canton to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, they have a field like
Yeah.
in front, and you can run a 40, and I've done that a couple times. So.
Oh, have you?
Oh yeah.
Is it next to the medical office? Is there
Yeah,
a medical office right next to it?
It does. There's a sign that says you must sign a waiver.
Are you serious?
No, there's no.
Oh, okay.
If you're over 45, please just go inside. There's a wheelchair waiting for you. It's okay.
Right. Yeah, if you're over 45, they just on the replay footage, they just speed it up 1.2%, you know, just to bump it up a little bit, make us feel like we're back in high school. All right, guys. Paul, I almost fucked it up. That is Joe from #Sports. We'll see you guys later. Have a great one, and we will be back with more draft and combine stuff. This is going to be our next couple weeks, guys. Like, this is it. More news and notes on the upcoming Bills season. Thanks for joining us tonight. Have a great one, everybody.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? If you're interested, reach out to me. We'll have a confidential, no obligation question and answer conversation. You have absolutely nothing to lose, possibly everything to gain. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!